Hello, folks. Frank Vanderbush here, Associate Pastor at the Country Church of Ruthton service this morning. And it's Memorial Day weekend, so I want to kind of focus on that. You know, we live in a great country, and I never want to take for granted the freedoms that are afforded us because of the sacrifice of others. So today we're going to learn about the origination of Memorial Day, the poppy, and the tomb of the unknown soldier. And this is a compilation of facts and stories of mine and other ones I've found online in different places like that, stories from my dad, stuff. So I hope after you hear today's message that you come away with a greater anticipation for the sacrifice that was made by millions to purchase the freedoms that you enjoy. So sit back, listen, learn, appreciate, and remember. That's the key thing. You want to remember. You want to learn and you want to remember. You never want to forget where we came from. We have awakened a sleeping giant and filled him with terrible resolve. These are the words that were spoken by Japanese Commander Yamamoto after they bombed Pearl Harbor. He realized what he did. You know, America is a good country built on good godly principles. She's got a good foundation. You know, she doesn't go looking for a fight, but I tell you what, if you get her in a corner, you better watch out. So Memorial Day is an American holiday. I'm going to be doing a lot of reading here just so I can kind of try to keep on track, folks. You'll forgive me for that. Memorial Day is an American holiday observed on the last Monday of May, honoring the men and women who have died while serving in the U.S. military. Originally known as Decoration Day, it originated in the years following the Civil War. The Civil War, which ended in the spring of 1865, claimed more American lives than any conflict in U.S. history and required the establishment of the country's first national cemeteries. By the late 1860s, Americans in various towns and cities had begun holding springtime tributes to the countless fallen soldiers by decorating their graves with flags and flowers and reciting prayers. Memorial Day, as Decoration Day gradually came to be known, originally honored only those who were lost during the Civil War. But during World War I, the United States found itself embroiled in another major conflict, and the holiday evolved to commemorate the American military personnel who died in all wars. Later, the custom was extended to pay tribute to deceased relatives and friends, both military and civilian. Memorial Day became an official holiday, federal holiday, in 1971. Many Americans observe Memorial Day by visiting cemeteries or memorials, by holding family gatherings, and participating in parades hosting military personnel and members of veterans organizations. Some folks wear a red poppy on Memorial Day in remembrance of those who were fallen in war. The Remembrance Day symbolism of the poppy started with a poem written by a World War I brigade surgeon who was struck by the sight of the red flowers growing on the ravaged battlefield. From 1914 to 1918, World War I took a greater human toll than any previous conflict, with some 8.5 million soldiers dead of battlefield injuries and disease. The Great War, as it was known, also ravaged the landscape of Western Europe, where the most fierce fighting took place. From the devastated landscape of battlefields, the red poppy would grow, and thanks to a famous poem, the poppy became a powerful symbol of remembrance. Across northern France and Flanders, the brutal clashes between the Allied and Axis soldiers tore up the fields and the forest, wreaking havoc on the soil beneath. If you've ever seen the pictures of those battles, you could see the absolutely devastated land where them battles were held. The ground was just torn, holes in it, as muddy as the trees were just twigs. No trees even left. Get out. Yeah, go on Google and just Google World War I pictures, World War II pictures. It's amazing the carnage that war leaves. It's amazing. It would give you more of appreciation for what those individuals faced when they were fighting for freedom. So shortly after the terror and destruction of that battle, in the warm early spring of 1915, bright red flowers began peeking through the battle-scarred land. Lieutenant John McCrae, who served as a brigade surgeon for the Allied artillery unit, spotted the clusters of poppies that spring, shortly after the Second Battle of Ypres. McCrae tended to the wounded and got a first-hand look at the carnage of that clash in which the Germans unleashed lethal chlorine gas for the first time in the war. Some 87,000 Allied soldiers were killed, wounded, or went missing in that battle, as well as 37,000 on the German side. A friend of McCrae, Lieutenant Alex Helmer, was also among the dead. Struck by the sight of the red poppies on broken ground, McCrae wrote a poem, In Flanders Field, in which he channeled the voice of the fallen soldiers buried under those hardy poppies. Published in Punch magazine in the late 1915, the poem would be used at countless memorial ceremonies. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, folks. Yeah, I'm human, totally. And it became one of the most famous works of art to emerge from the Great Gulf War. Its fame spread far and wide by the time McCrae died from pneumonia and meningitis in January 1918. Here it is, In Flanders Field by John McCrae. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw, the torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. In New York, November 1918, 2 days before the armistice, the end of World War I, an American woman named Monina Michael came across the poem In Flanders Field by John McCrae. She was so moved that she made a personal pledge to keep the faith. She felt compelled to make a note of this pledge and hastily scribbled down a response entitled, We shall keep the faith, on the back of a used envelope. On that day she vowed to wear a red poppy of Flanders Field as a sign of remembrance. Here's the poem, We Shall Keep the Faith by Monina Michael. O you who sleep in Flanders fields, sleep sweet to rise anew. We caught the torch you threw, and holding high, we keep the faith with all who died. We cherish too the poppy red that grows on fields where valor led. It seems to signal to the skies that the blood of heroes never dies, but lends a luster to the red of the flower that blooms above the dead in Flanders fields. And now the torch and poppy red we wear in honor of our dead. Fear not that you have died for naught. We'll teach the lessons that you have wrought in Flanders fields. You know, sad thing is today, folks, kind of makes me wonder just if we're not forgetting the sacrifice of where we came from, of what our dads and grandpas and great-grandpas laying down their lives, laying down their freedoms just to purchase ours. To give their lives, to sacrifice their time, their efforts, their family time, their occupations, to leave it all, to purchase for their kids and grandkids a country that would afford them the opportunities to become the people that they wanted to be, to a land where we could experience freedom. And we can do that in this country. I tell you what, folks, from what I hear, you go to different countries. I was just talking to a young soldier man today, that when he was in Afghanistan, and I just asked him what it was like over there, and we talked about it a bit earlier, but he was saying just how good it is when you get back home. We got a lot to be thankful for, folks. So hats off to all the military. You'll find out, if you ever watch me preaching and keep on going here, different times, especially 4th of July, Veterans Day, things like that. I love the military, so it's very evident. I appreciate so much the sacrifice all have made. The National American Legion voted to use the poppy as the official U.S. national emblem of remembrance when its members convened in Cleveland, September 1920. Americans don't typically wear poppies on November 11th on Veterans Day, which honors all the living veterans. Instead, they wear the symbolic red flower on Memorial Day, the last Monday in May, to commemorate the sacrifice of so many men and women who have given their lives fighting for this country. November 19, World War I, both Allied and Central powers who had been battering each other for 4 years were pretty much spent. German offenses that year had been defeated with heavy casualties, and in late summer and fall, the British, French, and U.S. forces had pushed them back steadily. With the United States able to send more and more fresh troops into combat, the Germans were outmatched. As Germany's allies crumbled around them, the war's outcome seemed clear. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, the incessant, constant boom of artillery abruptly went silent. Stanhope Bain Jones, an American medical officer, could suddenly hear water dripping off the bush next to him. Think of the years of intense noise, earth shaking, ears ringing, all of a sudden go totally silent. Now to be able to hear water dripping off a bush beside you. How strangely beautiful that must have sounded for those men. Whew. Jones said, and I quote, "It seemed mysterious, queer, unbelievable. All of the men knew what the silence meant, but nobody shouted or threw his hat in the air." Unquote. It took hours for the reality to sink in. World War I, the bloodiest conflict so far in human history, with more than 8.5 million military dead, 21 million more wounded, had finally ended. So just put yourself for a moment in those soldiers' place. Dragging yourself through the mud, living in trenches. Can you imagine just years of fighting with near constant rifle fire, cannons, bombs going off around you? The bodies of your comrades being blown up and torn from limb to limb, laying lifeless on foreign soil. The uncertainty of wondering if you'd be the next to die. Not knowing if you'd ever again make it back home to the other side of the world to see your family. Death and destruction all around you. The land turned black because of the bomb and artillery craters being blown into it. Trees with no leaves or branches left on them. Just sticks pointing out of the ground. Go look it up. Horses, cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, dogs, cats lay dead. Homes, buildings of business, houses of worship, dislodged from their foundations, burned, war-torn, uninhabitable. Civilians hungry, bewildered, sick, wounded, dead. That's what a war machine looks like. War is very brutal and very ugly. But you know what's worse than war? Being a prisoner in a land that was once your own. Some things are worth fighting for, folks. And your freedom, that wasn't even ours. We were going over there to help other people. They weren't invading America over here. They were invading another peaceful land. But we stood up. So being a prisoner in land that was once your own, that would be worse than war. That's why our fathers and grandfathers and great-grandpas went out and did what they did. not being allowed the opportunity to grow and to dream and to live and to thrive. All because of an ungodly ruler has in their own prideful, selfish, ruthless goals in mind and not the best interests of people. It was always a ruthless, ungodly enemy that wants to come in, steal, kill, and destroy. Isn't that right? Isn't that what Jesus said in John 10:10? The thief, the devil, comes to steal, kill, and destroy. That's exactly what was happening. We as Americans didn't start World War I. We didn't get involved until German submarines sank passenger and cargo ships. We didn't get into World War II by wanting to take other people's country and possessions. December 7th, 1941, Japan landed 6 carrier groups, the largest ever assembled in history, within 300 miles of Oahu, Hawaii. They unleashed a surprise attack and blindsided America by bombing Pearl Harbor. They wanted to establish a beachhead, because the next move, folks, is they're working their way toward the mainland of America. That's where they wanted to come. We didn't bomb Japan first. They bombed us. On June 6, 1944, Americans landed on the French beaches of Normandy to help liberate a captive people from the ruthless iron grip of Hitler's Nazi killing machine. His regime was ruthless and slaughtered millions of defenseless people. I could so much get into telling you stories right now, but I just don't have the time to do it. But you keep tuning in and we'll kind of bump into a few of them here and there. It was terrible. Hitler was terrible. If you've seen the concentration camps, and it wasn't just Jews, it was anybody in that area, whatever country you were in. If you weren't German, you were considered lower than rats. They would starve you down, beat you, do experiments on you. They had no respect for life whatsoever. Conquer, kill. That's all that his regime was about. Ruthless. War and all its horror is a terrible necessity at times to keep tyrants and evil from consuming this world, folks. If it wasn't for war, if it wasn't for the police, if it wasn't for good guys, things would get pretty ugly. Edmund Burke said, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." How true that is. Unless a man allows himself to be governed by the goodness of God, he will never be satisfied with what he has. And he will seek to take from someone else. The war in Europe had concluded when Germany signed its instrument of surrender, May 8th, 1945. That's because we went over there and helped folks. They were marching, they were wiping that whole area out. Didn't stand a chance against Hitler's war machine. As the Allies turned their full attention to the Pacific theater after Germany had signed and ceased the war over there, we called for unconditional surrender of the Imperial Japanese Armed Forces in the Potsdam Declaration, July 26, 1945. The alternative of that being prompt and utter destruction. Japan ignored the ultimatum and the war continued. The U.S. was in the process of securing islands around Japan to establish bases and airfields for a possible future invasion of the Japanese Empire. There was a number of battles being waged in the Pacific theater, such as the Battle of Iwo Jima. It was a major battle in which the United States Marine Corps landed on and eventually captured the island from the Imperial Japanese Army. The American invasion designated Operation Detachment had the goal of capturing the entire island, including 3 Japanese-controlled airfields to provide a staging area for attacks on the Japanese mainland. This 5-week battle comprised some of the most fierce and bloody fighting in the Pacific in World War II. This is where the famous picture of the 6 Marines raising the American flag, you remember that, after the island was taken? They're sitting there and you can see the picture of them raising the flag. 3 of those Marines were killed later on, a few days later. The Battle of Luzon, fought January 9 through August 15, 1945, was a land battle of the Pacific Theater of Operations, World War II, by Allied forces of the U.S. against forces of the Empire of Japan. The battle resulted in a U.S. and Allied victory. The Allies took control of all strategical and economically important locations of Luzon. While not one of the highest U.S. casualties, it was the highest net casualty battle of U.S. forces fought in World War II, with 200,000 Japanese combatants dead, 130,000 Filipino civilians and combatants dead, and 10,000 American soldiers killed. So my dad told me stories about his fighting in the Battle of Luzon. He said at night you would hole up in your foxhole, and the Navy would sit just offshore a ways, and they would just blanket the sky and the treetops with artillery fire. He said you could see like it was daytime because of all the tracer rounds lighting up the sky. So a tracer round is like about every 5th round or so that shoots a round that glows after it's shot. So you can just see it zipping right through the sky. So he said it was just like daytime. The big guns, the 50 cal, everything just going off. And just through the treetops, and you'd be hunkered down in your foxhole. I can't tell you all the stories, but I got some pretty good ones for you sometime. But the reason you say, why were they doing this at night, is because the Japanese were dropping paratroopers in. And they would drop them at night so they could sneak in. And I remember Dad saying, during the battle, when you're fighting, it's intense. You got all the adrenaline running. You don't really got time so much to be afraid or fearful. He says, the scariest time was when it was at night, when you were in your foxhole. It was all dark, other than the tracer rounds. After the initial guns going off and everything, but there would come a point in time during the night when it'd all get quiet because the paratrooper planes were gone. There wasn't no more of them in the air, so there was no more reason for them to shoot through the skies and through the treetops. But he said, some of those Japanese soldiers made it. And he said, just wait, and if you're in your foxhole there, that was some of the most unnerving times. So you appreciate stories. Gosh. The one thing I wish I'd have done was ask my dad more questions. Man, I just wish I'd have spent more time asking questions. Because it's impossible now. Them old World War II boys, they're about gone. There isn't a whole lot of them left. So man, if you know one, I would spend some time with them just asking some questions. Because those stories are, if you don't hear them, if they don't pass them on, they're gone, folks. I appreciate so much what those guys went through. In the Battle of Okinawa, the United States Army and Marine Corps troops fought a long and bloody battle to catch Okinawa so it could be used as a major air force and troop base for the planned invasion of Japan. During this battle, about 95,000 Imperial Japanese Army troops and 12,510 Americans were killed. Okinawa has been a critical staging base location since the end of World War II until this very day, with about 26,000 U.S. military personnel residing there. On bases, U.S. bases in Okinawa played critical roles in the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the war in Afghanistan, and the Iraqi War. In the final year of World War II, the Allies prepared for what was anticipated to be a very costly invasion of the Japanese mainland. It was in the works. They were thinking about how to go in there. This undertaking was preceded by a conventional firebombing campaign that devastated 67 Japanese cities. By August 1945, the Allies' Manhattan Project had produced 2 types of atomic bombs. The 509th Composite Group of the United States Army Air Force was equipped with a specialized silver plate version of the B-29 Superfortress that could deliver them from Tinian and to the Mariana Islands. Orders for the atomic bombs to be used on 4 Japanese cities were issued on July 25th. Hadn't really remembered hearing that before. On August 6th, we had 2 more to go. On August 6th, one of the modified B-29s dropped the uranium gun-type little boy bomb on Hiroshima, where also was housed a sizable military garrison. 3 days later, on August 9, a plutonium implosion Fat Man bomb was dropped by another B-29 on Nagasaki. The bombs immediately devastated their targets. August 15, 1945, 6 days after the bombing of Nagasaki, Japan announces its surrender to the Allies. On September 2, 1945, Tokyo Bay, Japan, on the deck of the battleship Missouri, the Japanese government signs the Instrument of Surrender, which effectively ended World War II. Gotta love that. How about we just pull a big American battleship right in your bay, and your leaders come out on our deck and sign your Instrument of Surrender? Yeah. Don't back America into a corner. I wonder what life would be like now if we hadn't dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. For sure, tens of thousands of people died. But they estimate that if we had not dropped the bombs, that 1 million American soldiers and far more Japanese civilians would have died in their homeland. So what if these soldiers of ours, our dads, grandpas, great-grandpas, had to go into these Japanese mainland and fight for months and years? I wonder where we would be right now. Would my dad have made it? He was on Luzon, that's just right there. He was over on Okinawa, that's just right there. They were prepping those areas to have access to the Japanese mainland. That's why they were taking them. Though if we hadn't dropped the bombs, them folks, those boys would have had to go in. Would I be here? That's my dad. 1 million men. He could have been one of them. You know, it's easy to say that we shouldn't have done that or we should have done this. But remember, we didn't start it. We have awakened a sleeping giant, and we have filled him with terrible resolve from their own head commander's mouth. That's exactly what happened, folks. See, we don't go around picking fights. We don't go around looking for trouble that way. God has blessed this country, and that doesn't mean we always do the right thing all the time, any more than all of us people, humans, as individuals, do the right thing all the time. But collectively, she's a good country. She'll stand up for the underdog. She'll stand up for the little guy. She'll stand against the tyrant. We use our weapons to keep peace, or to make peace. The most solemn ceremony conducted on Memorial Day is the placing of the wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier located in Arlington National Cemetery. On one of the sides of the monument is inscribed, "Here rest in honor and glory, an American soldier, known but to God." The bodies of those individuals in there, different ones from different wars, they have no idea who they are. See, those wars that I was talking about, bodies get so mutilated, torn up, they don't even know who they are. But God remembers. God knows. The tomb guards are soldiers of the United States Army. It is considered to be one of the highest honors to serve as a sentinel at the Tomb of the Unknowns. Fewer than 20% of all volunteers are accepted for training, and of those, only a fraction pass the training to become full-fledged tomb guards and receive their Honor Guard Tomb of the Unknown Soldier identification badge. It's a military badge of the United States Army which honors those soldiers who have been chosen to serve as members of the honor guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It's the second least awarded badge in the U.S. military, second to the astronaut badge. Since its establishment on February 7th, 1958, only 663 soldiers have been awarded this badge. This badge is the only military badge that can be revoked for any action that brings disrespect to the tomb during the lifetime of the tomb guard. The soldier walking the mat does not wear a rank insignia so as not to outrank the unknowns, whatever their rank may have been. The guard is changed every hour in the winter, every half hour in the summer. The guard takes 21 steps, stops, takes a crisp 90-degree turn, faces the tomb for 21 seconds, turns again, faces back toward the opposite way on the mat there, shoulders his weapon from where it was, now it'd be facing the tomb. He shoulders it over on this side, facing the crowd. Waits another 21 seconds, marches another 21 steps. He places his weapon over here just to signify that the tomb is always protected. There's always somebody between that and the tomb, honoring the dead, respecting the dead, respecting those that gave their lives, just like I talked about. That's good stuff. I've witnessed the changing of the guard personally. Man, somber. It's a very moving experience. The first 24-hour guard was posted at midnight, July 2nd, 1937. The Tomb of the Unknowns has been guarded continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week since that time. Always had a soldier guarding that tomb since 1937. That's an honor guard. That is this country respecting the sacrifice that those men made. You know, and that's what torques me off inside, folks. Excuse me. It's an emotional topic for me. I'm sorry. But that's what torques me off, is when I see people disrespect this country. Because I know what those guys paid. Well, I don't know, but through the stories, I know the price they paid. She's a grand old flag. Is that right? She's a grand old flag. Inclement weather, terrorist attacks, nor anything to date. 9/11 has caused the watch to cease. That's pretty powerful. If you ever get a chance, you're in D.C., go out and see it. I guarantee you'll be glad you did. From Jamestown to Plymouth, the American Revolutionary War, struggle for independence. From the war to end all wars to the present actions of today across the globe, millions have laid down their lives to make us free. There is one day a year that we set aside to honor and memorialize them, and tomorrow we celebrate that day. Many people see it as just a day off, a 3-day weekend, a reason to get out and have a cookout and have friends over. But to those who have lost someone because of war or military action, it means much more than a day off. In fact, every American ought to recognize this day and honor those who gave their lives to make America what it is today. America is free. America is strong. She's a nation worth fighting for. Because men and women have died for this country, we have the privilege to preach God's word freely, in peace. We have the privilege to live at peace in our towns, in our homes. We have the privilege to pursue peace, prosperity, and happiness. We need to thank God for those who died to make us free. On Memorial Day, we mourn the loss of families disrupted, marriages ended, occupations destroyed, dreams not realized, lives cut short because of sacrifice. A lot of those old boys didn't come home. The empty place left in a mother's heart after two soldiers came to the door is still painfully deep and wide. Time can somewhat dull the pain, but the memories are forever etched in her mind. Eventually, tears of sadness can turn to tears of joy as we reflect on the memories of everything that made that person special. Some may think, I can't believe Frank took an entire church service to talk about war and soldiers. I could take a lot longer than a church service to talk about war and soldiers. Well, let me say, my dear friends, it's because of those soldiers that you and I are able to gather in our nice churches and openly hear the preaching of God's Word. If Hitler had his way, you wouldn't be doing it. And many other people out there would have that same attitude. Without their sacrifice, we would quite probably, if we were still living, be meeting in an underground room somewhere, just fearing for our lives and quoting from memory scriptures that we had learned. So are we thankful for that sacrifice? Freedom always cost someone something. Freedom is never free. Always cost someone something. As we remember those who died for our country to purchase our physical freedom, it's also important to remember another one that died to purchase our spiritual freedom 2,000 years ago. That battle was fought on a hill called Calvary by an individual that fought selflessly and valiantly and victoriously. Jesus Christ willingly left known comforts, subjecting himself to extreme pain, anguish, all to obtain freedom for a people that without his help, the Bible says, were without hope. Well, that hopeless person that Jesus came to save is you. Just as people in those small European towns and villages were totally helpless and without hope as they watched the German war machine entering their cities and in their homes. Can you imagine that? Being in your homes and hearing tanks roll in outside and soldiers come in beating your door down. It's terrible. So too was mankind without strength to overcome the enemy on his own. Nothing you could do. Those citizens may have heard that help was coming, but how do you think they felt when they saw the Allied soldiers coming over the hill? Wow. My goodness. Again, you can look at those pictures. You look at some of them concentration camps. Those individuals were so starved down. They were just like a chair, just like sticks. Legs just like sticks. Arms just skin and bones. But you could see smiles on their face. Most of them died when they were in that condition anyway. But just the sight of being liberated. Big smiles, as much as they could smile. And you see an American soldier holding them and helping them. That's pretty powerful, folks. They appreciated seeing the Calvary come. I appreciated seeing the Calvary come. My spiritual Calvary, as in Jesus Christ. I appreciated seeing him come too, folks. I was definitely without hope. Jesus battled the armies of hell and prevailed so that we might have liberty in his name. Just as we should appreciate and celebrate the freedoms that we have in this country every day, so should we also be eternally grateful for what Christ has done for us and not make it a priority just one day a week. Love him all the time. Appreciate these old soldiers and what they did every day too. Every day you can get in your car and turn the key and start it up and drive where you want, go to the cafe and have a coffee or whatever. You better thank a soldier, because that's what got you there. The freedom of your soul, the freedom that you don't have to live under the bondage of sin, you better thank the Savior, because that's what got you there. Every day is Memorial Day for a Christian, folks. You know that if there was only one sinner, Jesus still would have came and died for you. That's how great His love is for you. On Memorial Day, we remember the lives. The headstones we place on graves are a point of contact to cause us to pause, remember, and appreciate the loved one or the friend that we've lost. A lot of you are going to do that. Even this COVID stuff, you're going to go to some graves and stuff and put markers on them, or just stand there and gaze and remember. That's good. You do that. Never lose that. Know where your folks' graves are at. Go visit them once in a while. I know it's not them anymore, but it's a point of contact. Point of remembrance. Part of the emotional healing is just to remember the life of that one who's passed. On Memorial Day, we mourn the loss, we remember the lives, and we're thankful for the sacrifice. All of the heroic acts done on the battlefield throughout history have made our country what it is today. We are wealthy, we are blessed, and we are free. I'm proud to be an American. She's the envy of the world. I say to you folks that are ashamed of it or don't want to be here, there's the door. There's 1 billion people that'll take your spot. She's a good country. Don't whine about everything that's wrong with it. Appreciate what's good about it. Do what you can to change the bad to the good, but you better appreciate this country. I tell you what, if you were in a prison camp or if you were in an oppressive country, you got off that airplane back in this country, you'd be kissing the dirt, because she's a land of freedom. Thank God for that. We have this luxury of freedom because of men and women have died to purchase it. It didn't just happen. Didn't just happen. Blood was spilled to purchase your freedom today. We have the promise of salvation. We did nothing to obtain it. It didn't just happen. Blood was spilled to purchase your spiritual freedom. For this, folks, we must be thankful. Almost done here. Deuteronomy 32:7 says, "Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee, thy elders, and they will tell thee." We got to ask our parents more stories, folks. We got to, like I said, I regret so much not doing that. The youth have not seen all that their elders have seen. The stories must be told them over and over again, lest time diminish their relevance and importance. And that's exactly what's happening today. The further you get away from those amazing times, those ones I was just reading about, them dates in history, the more distant they become, the less impression they have on the current generation or future generations, if they're not being told those stories. See, that's what a number of people in this country want to do. They want to wipe out history. They want to get rid of all that stuff we've been talking about, just so they can kind of have a new slate and they can kind of think they can turn this country whichever way they want it to go. But we know what the real history is, and let's make sure we tell it to our kids and grandkids. Last verse, Romans 13:7 says, "Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom is due, fear to whom fear is due, honor to whom honor is due." So it's our duty to pay tribute, to honor those, and pay tribute and honor to those who have put their lives on the line for the principles that we hold dear. Our American service personnel have made us free, and for this, we should be the utmost thankful. May God bless America. Thank you, folks, for taking time and watching. The Lord loves you. I'm glad to be able just to reach out to you today. If you see a veteran, and I do this all the time, as soon as I learn somebody's a veteran or a soldier, I say, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for standing up and making this country what it is today. We're so appreciative of that. So appreciative of the Lord for the freedoms that He's brought us. So God bless you. Thank you for taking your time. You guys have a great Memorial Day weekend. In Jesus' name.